Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicolette Springer, and I am running for Orange County Commission. Thank you for joining us today. I have a special guest with me, Justina.
Hi, my name is Justina Pratt, and I live in District 4. I am a working mom. I have two sons. One is in second grade, and one is in fourth grade. We are very busy between school, Cub Scouts, and soccer. Mm-hmm. So I know that you're a busy mom too.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds about like average mom, busy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. That's what we do as moms.
Yeah, well, it's nonstop because I feel like there's no break in between, and I also feel like it comes in ebbs and flows sometimes with the calendar. So this time of year, I feel like it's a little bit more consistent, but I know we're getting into the crazy time of May.
You know what's funny though is that it doesn't really matter what gets added to my calendar. It all works out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like that you have this plan and you're like, oh, this is where all the things are going to fit in, and then it never works out exactly, but it still kind of somehow figures itself out.
You still make it work. That's the whole thing. That's what I think is great about being a mom, is that no matter what gets thrown your way, you can spin it and make it work.
Yes, I think that as long as I think there's a level of lowering your expectations, though. Perfection.
Not for ourselves, though.
No, for everything else. You just got to lower the bar slightly. Expect, as long as all the kids turn out alive at the end of this event, we're good.
Right.
And sometimes what you envision the activity is going to be for the kid is not what the kid envisioned, and the kid's covered in head to toe in dirt. It's like, this is the best day ever. And you're like, this is not what I planned, but okay.
But hey, you're having a great time. We're going to go home and take a shower now.
Exactly.
Everything is able to be cleaned.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
It's definitely, I would say, busy is one of those words that annoys me slightly because it doesn't give us enough credit for everything that we do. And busy just kind of seems like it's not an urgent enough word.
It's just the status quo.
Correct. Yes.
Is where we're at all the time.
Correct. Yeah. And I think all moms are like that. And I think the dads too. I mean, we have to give the dads some credit. John's incredibly active and helps with all of the things.
Yeah.
And I don't think the dads get enough credit often, but I think John would throw me the credit and say, well, you're kind of the glue holding it together, and I'm just on this train and hoping we don't derail.
We'll never let that happen, will we? So like you said, like for dads, they're very much involved as well. My husband is the team manager for our son's U10 team, so he's really involved in that. And then I'm the advancement chair for our Cub Scout pack, so I'm involved in that. I know that you're also involved with like your kids and their activities.
So
and
I'm
stuff.
Emerson and Avery's Girl Scout leader. And I have 3 other co-leaders. So there's 4 of us who run the troop, and I couldn't do it without the other 3 women. Like, it definitely takes a village to get this. We've got 30 girls, so it's a lot of time management to try to get that done. We just finished up cookies, and it is National Girl Scout Week. So Girl Scouts is 106 years old. So 106 years ago, Juliette Gordon-Lowe said, hey, let's do this. And so she got 18 girls, and they started in Savannah, Georgia, and they've been going strong since. So it's a great opportunity for the girls, I think. I think it's so important to have an organization where it's dedicated to women and dedicated to girls, because I think girls excel in that environment so much more so than in other environments. It just gives them the opportunity to be themselves and to do fun things and not worry about just how judgy. And our girls are great. Like, we've got 30 girls who really are just amazing.
I've seen some of the things that you guys have done for your meetings, and it gives the girls an opportunity to be very creative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did a sleepover at NASA recently, which everybody loved, which was great. We slept under the Saturn V rocket, which was amazing. Our next big camp thing is we're debating between a zoo or an aquarium, but we're definitely going to do SeaWorld at some point. But we do a lot of different activities. This past meeting, we did letters to the school board, because one of our girls brought up the issue that they have styrofoam trays in the cafeteria.
Oh.
Yeah, and so we did the math to figure out how many styrofoam trays were being used just in their school. And then you have to multiply that out if that's the same tray that's being used. And it was insane. It was millions of trays in a school year if you calculated out how much. And so their question was, because we were learning about recycling, and their question was, well, how is this going into our landfill, and why is the county using styrofoam or the school board using styrofoam as opposed to something that's disposable or washable? And the girls came up with this all on their own. Like we started the conversation talking about recycling, and we're going to the recycling facility and to the landfill at some point for a field trip. So this was interesting to them. And one of the girls brought up, like, oh, well, there are restaurants that you just use a reusable tray, or there are restaurants that have the trays that are more like that paper egg carton that would decompose. And so they just brought it up on their own, and so they wrote letters, and they're sending them out to their school board members. So I thought that was just a cool activity, and that patch is for inside government that they're working on.
That's a great way to empower them to make a difference at their own level in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah. And I had no idea. I didn't know they were using styrofoam trays in the cafeteria. Did you?
No.
Yeah, so this is a problem they came up with all on their own, because the prompt was, where do you see waste in your community? And that was their answer, was that they saw styrofoam. So I think it's great to see them come up with that. And I lead the older girls in our troop, so it's a different dynamic than I'm used to with my own children, because my girls are 5 and 8, and so the girls I'm leading are 10, 11, 12. And even though it's a 3-year gap, it's a huge difference from a maturity level, and to see their thought process. And I'm excited to see when our girls get to that age, but it is definitely fun, and it's very rewarding for me to do that with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So are you guys doing anything special for Girl Scout celebration?
We did a field trip last week to an amazing animal activity. And then our next meeting will do a focus on the history of Girl Scouts. But this week, it just didn't work out with the way spring break was timed, and it happens to fall very close to, our meeting had to be postponed this month because of spring break. So we had to work our schedule around that.
There's that what we're talking about again.
Yeah.
Is you just make it happen, right?
Just make it happen.
Things
We're like,
come up,
it'll be fine.
change.
We'll celebrate next month.
There you go.
Girls are happy.
And there you go. It's going to all get done.
Correct.
So I live inside District 4, and one of the things that I find interesting is that you're running for a county position. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I didn't know, knowing you and finding out more information, is I live inside the city limits. So, mind you, I live inside the city limits by like 500 feet.
Yes, you're right on the line.
I really am directly on the line.
You can see the county.
I can. I pass the sign every day coming in and out. And so for me, I have a city official that handles situations in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So, but I get to vote on the county commission as well.
Correct.
Because the county impacts me also?
Yes. So most of District 4, which Katie can pop in a map so we can see where the district is, but most of District 4 is unincorporated. It's like 90% of it is unincorporated, meaning it falls under just the county government or just county government. There's about 10%-ish that falls under Orlando city proper. And we're one of the few counties that doesn't have other municipalities, so we only have to work with 2. But like if you were in another county or another part of the county, you would not only have City of Orlando, but you may have City of Winter Park or Apopka or any of those other ones. So we actually are in a unique situation on District 4 that we only have one municipality to coincide with. But from a county perspective, and you may be like, well, I live in the city, so why is it important? The things that we do from a county perspective affect you in a variety of ways. One example would be where schools go. Now, we as a county commission do not do anything that happens in the school. So curriculum and teacher pay and all those issues, that falls under school board. But if you're getting a new school or if you have an existing school, the land use of that building, where it was built on, that fell under the commission. So your commissioners voted on if that was a proper location, size of school, those kind of things that go along with land use, how far it's set back from the road, all of those civil engineering issues. Those are things that come before the county. So since we have a county-run school system, no matter what municipality you live in, the county does affect you because of that. And that's just one example. There are a variety of ways that the county affects you if you're a city resident as well as a county resident. But that's just one big example.
So now, for instance, with the way that District 4 is growing exponentially right now. So currently, we have certain schools that are set to be built at certain times. Yeah. Now, where in your background, or how do you feel like you're qualified to kind of make the determination of when these should be built, or if we should move them up, or if we should delay them, or if something should get even approved to clear more land within District 4?
So when something comes before the commission, it's not the first time I'm seeing it. So when when something comes before the commission for a vote, that commissioner has had months and months, maybe even longer than that, to look at the data that's been provided for them by a variety of experts in the field. So any vote, whether it be a school issue or if we should have, a stop sign, the studies have been done. We're getting opinions from the civil engineers. We're getting opinions from those who, whichever the issue is, the experts that are in that field. We get opinions from the lawyers within the county. And all of that information we take into consideration beforehand. And then when we go to that vote, what you all are seeing when you see the vote online, because the votes are all live streamed on Tuesdays, that's kind of the end of the road for that issue in a sense. There may be some follow-up, but for the most part, all of that work has been put forth months and months ahead of time. There's nothing that just pops on the agenda without there being some research in the background side of that.
Okay. So in addition to that, so you're talking about with the development, how does that affect, I mean, we see survey crews out in the district all the time. I mean, is that because we're looking for road expansions and we're looking, and that research is being done?
Yes. So a lot of the times when you see those surveys out there, it's because, and it depends on where you're seeing it and what exactly they're looking for. But for a lot of that, that's for land use information that's going to be sent out. And if it's a county surveyor and you'll see those, then yes, all that information is coming back to us so that we can make an informed decision.
So now going back to, you guys planning out when and where schools are going to go, one of the things that are happening is overcrowding is happening with inside schools. Now, you guys don't determine zoning or anything like that.
That's cool.
But looking at it from a safety standpoint, how can overcrowding affect our children, basically?
So from the overcrowding perspective with the school and how that affects county commission is that when we have developments come in, those are some of the things that we learn ahead of time. So when you have a developer come in and say, I want to build 600 homes in this community, it may not happen that day. It's going to obviously happen years down the road. But part of that plan that they present with us, and one of the things that we look at when we're making that decision, would be how many families are going to move into it. So, there's a formula that will say this many homes would equal X number of parents, X number of children. And it's not exact, but it's a good estimate. And this is, again, the experts in the field provide this data. And that's when we could say, well, do we have the infrastructure to maintain this? And that's something that commissioners are going to have to take into consideration when they're voting on those developments, is do we have the schools in place that could maintain those children? Do we have roads in place? Do we have enough lights on those roads? Do we have enough infrastructure within our public safety structure? So is there a fire department close by? Do we have enough law enforcement to patrol those areas? Because as we know, development, the more people you have, just by the nature of humanity, you're going to see an increase in crime. It's just the nature of it. So we need to make sure that there's law enforcement enough to cover that. With the increase of population, we're going to need an increase in public services. And so that's one of the things that collectively we have to look at. So when you're looking at safety and overcrowding in schools, that's such a tiny piece of the puzzle for development. For development, as a commissioner, I'm going to have to consider, how does this affect everyone globally? And is this development a good decision for this particular community and the residents who already live there? Because in my opinion, a lot of what we see when you're coming in, you have a new development, then you're not necessarily always looking at the current resident situation. But right now in Orange County, particularly in District 4, we don't have too many undeveloped areas. So every new development that's coming in is going to affect the current residents. We don't have something that's going to be clean slate, hey, we're starting from scratch. And so we need to take that into consideration. How does it affect you who already lives there? How is it going to affect your roads and your school overcrowding? And the same for me as well. Anywhere in District 4, it's going to have to look at community input on that. And you guys, as residents, we all have the opportunity to give community input. I was at a community meeting yesterday, and there was a presentation from all the county administrators saying that this is what we're doing in different sectors. And then at the end, there was Q&A. And we have that at commission meetings. If we're going to do a vote, and even before the vote, you have the opportunity to reach out to your elected official and to make sure that you're voicing your opinion about whether or not you like something that's going to be coming into your community. And they need to hear that, because they do take that into consideration. And it's important for us to know if something is going to affect you in a unique way that we maybe had not even thought of.
What were some of the questions that were asked at this meeting, though?
Few questions. The main questions were revolving, I would say, around safety issues. One question was about street parking. So I live in a neighborhood where my HOA restricts our street parking. So this isn't an issue for me. So it was interesting to hear from other residents who don't have an HOA that restricts that, is that the street parking, if people can park on the street in your home and the street is only yay big to begin with, it's now become a safety issue because the fire department can't get down there in case of an emergency. And so if we have double-sided street parking, there's no way for that engine to get through. And so that's something that they were talking about, different ways that we can address that issue. It's a possibility that there can be an ordinance put in place so that there would be just one side of the street parking or no side of the street parking. But that's a process, and it does take time. But code enforcement was there, and the sheriff's department sent a representative to talk about how we could potentially change that for the residents. One of the other issues was trash. And there is we all have in the county side, and you're in the city, so I think you guys are on a different timetable than us. But on the county side and the unincorporated side, I think it's been a year now since we switched over to the giant trash cans, the ones that I literally can stand in. I think it's almost a 5-foot tall trash can. Like, it's a huge trash can. You guys have the city ones, which are the same size.
Correct.
But we just switched over to those. Where it's become problematic, and I see this in my own neighborhood, is that they're almost too big to put in your garage if you have other things in your garage. And so people are putting them out, and it's becoming unsightly. And so one of the concerns was, how do we get people to put the trash either in the garage or somewhere in a covered place, so that when you're driving around, you're not just seeing a bunch of trash cans, because that's an eyesore. And the resolution there was that you should be calling the landfill, or you can call 311 and put in a complaint, and they will connect you with there's enforcement agents at the landfill, and it's there. Yes, I know, right? So solid waste. See, we all are learning something. So solid waste has enforcement officers who could remedy that situation. They could come out and speak to the resident. It's an education piece. They will send them information, but you do have to put the complaint in unless they don't know there's an issue. So contacting 311 anytime you have a complaint about something is an important part of your civic duty, because if not, then the county government doesn't know that something's working or not working.
Very true.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that unfortunately kind of occurred this week has been the 1-month anniversary of Parkland.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we've seen a lot of the kids doing walkouts and walk-ups. And the one thing that happened with my kids, because they're at an elementary school level, is they chose on Wednesday to perform lockdown drills, to go ahead and go through that process. What would happen if there was an incident at our schools? Who responds to that?
The incidents at the schools, it's a variety of law enforcement. And so in that emergency situation, for the most part, if you live in the city and you're at your house and you have an emergency and you call 911, you're going to get Orlando Police Department. I live in unincorporated Orange, so if I call 911, I'm most likely getting the sheriff. In a situation that is a much bigger emergency, like a school shooting or a safety mechanism in a big county like that, in a big county building, you're going to get all jurisdictions on hand. So there will not be a shortage of law enforcement that can assist in that situation, and it's not going to be restricted to the city doing it themselves. You're going to see all law enforcement come out and do that, and that would include even some of our other agencies that are not city or county funded, because we obviously have federal agents in the area as well. So that would be an all hands on deck situation. So I wouldn't be concerned about there being a jurisdiction issue. That's not a case here.
Now, you recently participated in moderating a gun reform panel.
Yeah.
And you had multiple people there who, I think probably had some great information to give out. You had Jerry Demings, who's the Orange County Sheriff. You had Daryl Flynn, who is our District 2.
She's our District 2 school board member.
And then who else did you have there?
We had Andrea Halprin from Moms Demand Action, which is an advocacy group that promotes gun safety. And then we had Alex Barrio, who is the District Director for Congressman Darren Soto. Congressman Soto was in D.C. at the time, so was unable to make the panel himself, but he sent his district director to give us an update and provide us with the information on the legislation that's currently going through the federal government.
And what kind of information came out that? Because like you said before, this also had a Q&A session.
Correct, it did. And so the way that we structured it was, I had myself and a high school student from Lake Nona High moderated the questions. And we had about 5 questions that we went back and forth with the panelists for about 30 minutes or so. And then we opened up the rest of it to the audience. And there was about, I would say, 60-ish people at the event. And so we allowed people to come up and speak and just ask their questions. And some of the information that I thought was most pertinent for people was, the sheriff was very candid about their resources and what they will be able to do for safety. And one of their big things right now to be proactive is to let students know that they're starting a very big campaign about not doing false not calling it a threat when it's a false. This is not a joke. They will be taking it very seriously. It's a waste of resources, and there will be a zero tolerance for it. And so that was a big thing that they're going to be doing. They're going to be joining with school board to make sure that that message is given out. I think most of the principals have been very adamant about making sure that information gets to the parents. The other thing they're doing is there's a hotline, and we could probably pop up the hotline. I don't have it off the top of my head, but there's a hotline where you could report incidents. So you could, if you have a suspicion that someone is unstable or someone said something, even if it's in a joking manner and you're not sure about it as a student, they want students to feel comfortable being able to report things without any consequences. Obviously, high school and middle school is one of those groups where peer pressure is so hard, and we don't want children to be feeling like they're being bullied for tattling. And so the sheriff and the school board are encouraging students if you hear something, say something. Exactly. And there's an opportunity for you to do that without anybody knowing who you are, so we could put the hotline up so that students know that. So that's two ways that they're being proactive about making sure they're getting as much information as possible. From a safety perspective, the school board, Daryl Flynn shared with us, the school board voted, all of them agreed that they will not be arming teachers in Orange County. This is not something that the school board agrees is the action that Orange County wants to take, and they're going to stand for this pretty strongly. I do not think that they're going to budge, and she said that the school board there was nobody who disagreed on the board. All of this, there's 6 voting members, and all of them agreed that this was not a good idea. So they're not going to be doing that. But they are looking at other ways that we can increase the safety in our schools. So, there's the conversation about metal detectors. There's a conversation about how we get the door buzzers at every single school, because there are schools that don't have a buzzer system when you go in. And they're slowly going to get to those. And I say slowly because it's not that they're not taking it seriously, but we're dealing with an enormous amount of schools. We are one of the largest school districts in the country. So this isn't a small task, and they are doing the best they can to get it done as quickly as possible. There are some schools that already have a lot of these safety mechanisms in place, and so they're using those as models, and they're trying to implement those throughout the schools. And you have to take in mind, like some of the newer schools, it's going to be easier for us to implement some of these safety mechanisms because the schools are newer and they're already retrofitted to be ready for this kind of thing. But we have some schools in our county that are decades old. And so infrastructure itself is just not lending itself to help us make that quicker. But they are doing their best to move as quickly as possible. Safety is their number one priority.
I know that the sheriff's office actually came out and did a kind of an assessment of my kids' school to see where they needed to make those changes and what things they needed to implement, because we do have the buzzer system. However, we didn't have the glass that goes in between the front office. And so it's a large area that you could still get through, even though it is a double.
Yeah, law enforcement came out to my daughter's school as well and did assessments. And I think that's going to be, school board members and law enforcement will be making the rounds, if they haven't already made those in the last 30 days, to assess all the safety mechanisms and make sure that those are in place. So I think that's step one, obviously, of seeing what we can change and how we can do that with the resources that we have. One of the things that was a topic of conversation was resource officers, which I know that was, and the bill that came out of the state, which was $67 million, is not enough for fundraising, is not enough for putting resource officers. It's just not. $67 million, we have 67 counties in the state, so that, if you go by size, they're not all going to get the same exact money. But even in a county like ours, it's just not going to go very far. So we do need more resources if we want to increase that. There's a portion of the sheriff's budget that's already funded by school board for officers, but it's going to have to be revisited. I don't think that it's going to be enough to make sure that there's ample enough resources in those officers in each of those schools. So that's a conversation for the future that's going to need to be had, is how do we use that money that's coming from the state, and how do we get more of it? Because quite honestly, it's just not going to be enough to fund resource officers at every single school.
Okay. Tell me about an upcoming thing that you're attending. It's called March for Our Lives.
Yes. So the school, we just had the walkout on Wednesday. And the walkout on Wednesday was the students showing some respect and having a moment of silence. I think they had 17 moments of silence. They had 17 moments of silence. Some of the schools did very different activities. I know that some of the high schools put out some empty chairs and that they said prayers and they listed their names of those who were lost. Some of them did speeches. There was some spoken word at a few of the high schools. So that was for the students to just express their, how they could basically support those students, just showing their respects, a memorial of sorts. The march is on the 24th of March, and it's going to be around Lake Eola. It's going to start at the amphitheater, and we're going to walk from the amphitheater to Pulse. So it's not going to go around Lake Eola like we did for the Women's March. It's going to be a little bit different. And the organization that's leading that is the same organization that organized the Women's March. And they're partnering with several other organizations in the community. Moms Demand Action will be there. Andrea was at our gun forum. The League of Women Voters, I believe, is also going to be there. And many other organizations will be there. One of the organizations that I went to an event for this week was the Pride Fund. And the Pride Fund started after Pulse. And it is a fund where they're advocating for gun safety, and so they will have a presence there as well. And they're encouraging students and anyone in the community who would like to come out and participate in this very peaceful demonstration to let our legislators and our elected officials know that enough is enough. We're going to take a stand for this, and we're not backing down, and we want to see some gun safety legislation come out of our states and our counties and out of the federal government as well. So it's a good opportunity, I think, for the community to get together, recognize those lives that have been lost, but also how do we move this conversation forward? How do we translate this into activism?
Fantastic. Now, one of the things I want to talk about before we have to end is I recently was able to host you and your team for a canvassing event in my neighborhood, which was great. It was a great opportunity for me to get out and talk with my neighbors and, introduce you and give them the opportunity to speak with someone who's running for county commission. How do people get involved like that more with the campaign?
Sure. So if you go to our website, Katie will pop up a link. There's a volunteer page, or you can just message us via Facebook or any of our other social media accounts, and we would be happy, we would love it actually, to have you as part of our volunteer corps. And we are building that over the course of every day. We're building that up. And so we would like to get as many people to help host us. And it's really simple. And Justina did it. We were at our house for 10 minutes before we all went out. It was just a meeting place for our volunteers to have a base. And then we would get all of our materials together, and then we'd disperse out into the community to go door knocking. And we'd come back probably about 2 hours later and kind of do the same thing in reverse. We're now dropping off our materials and saying our thank yous and moving on to the next neighborhood if we had a second event that day. So we're trying to get out into every single community. It's a large geographic district, and so we're doing our best to be in every one as often as possible. And the only way we can be in all of them is with building our volunteer base, because we need more people to help us be out there in the community. So if you can volunteer, that is an enormous help to the campaign. It's one of those things that it could be an hour of your time, it could be a few hours, it could be a regular, you can do this every Tuesday, you could pick a time, whatever works for you. We will put you to work. We have plenty of tasks to do. I'm a mom, so I'm very good at delegating, and I will find a job for every person that wants to help. And it's honestly, to me, the best way to build our campaign, because I want to speak to the residents. I want to get out and speak to our constituents and speak to our citizens and find out what is important to them. And so canvassing to me is the best part of campaigning, because I do get to get that face-to-face time. The other thing that you can do as a volunteer is you can host me in your home and invite your neighbors in. Have a coffee, have a thing in the evening, whatever works for you. It's, again, about an hour to an hour and a half. It depends. And we've done 2 of those already last week. And we've been doing them consistently throughout the last couple months, but we definitely will squeeze you into our calendar and make sure we can get you on there as soon as possible.
Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you for joining us.
It was a great time, and it's super easy.
It was. Anyone else want to join? We will take guests.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. My website is nicolettespringer.com. I'm obviously on Facebook because you're here with us. You could also find us on Instagram and on Twitter. And thank you again for joining us. And you guys have a great and safe weekend. Happy St. Patrick's Day.